Have you ever witnessed a moment so shocking it reshaped your entire view of the world? Picture this: a hardened police officer, full of cynicism, crossing paths with a young, homeless, black girl on a cold, unforgiving street. He thinks he has her all figured out, just another lost soul on the wrong side of life. But what if appearances are deceiving? What if this nobody is more important than he could ever imagine? The officer's mocking laughter quickly transforms into sheer panic when he realizes the powerful truth behind her identity. This story will make you question your assumptions and leave you on the edge of your seat. Officer Mark Stevenson never imagined his life would come to this. When he first joined the Detroit Police Department, he was an idealistic cadet, ready to save the world. He believed in justice and protecting the vulnerable. He told himself that he would never lose his sense of compassion, never harden his heart. But after 10 long years on the force, his spirit was worn out. Day after day, call after call, it felt as if he was dealing with the worst of humanity: crimes, complaints, poverty, hopelessness. The edges of Mark's sense of purpose were chiseled away by the passing seasons. So on a gloomy, drizzling morning, Mark was slouched in his squad car, a Ford Crown Victoria that had seen better days. The paint was peeling, the radio crackled with static, and the engine rattled ominously whenever he tried to brake. The skies over Detroit matched his mood, grey and unyielding. Each droplet of rain that trickled down the windshield reminded him just how cold and lonely the city could be. The dispatcher's voice crackled in through the radio. "Unit 462, please respond. Possible trespassing in progress at the intersection of Woodward Avenue and East Grand Boulevard." Mark sighed, flicked on the overhead lights, and pulled out. The stretch of Woodward between run-down shops and boarded-up buildings was a place he knew all too well. Homeless people wandered aimlessly, searching for a warm spot beneath store canopies or rummaging for scraps. Detroit had changed over the years, but one thing remained the same: the city's poorest found themselves stranded in these neglected corners. When Mark arrived at the intersection, he spotted her immediately. She was sitting by a brick wall next to a defunct bookstore, wearing a tattered, oversized jacket and rummaging through a plastic bag stuffed with random belongings. The girl couldn't have been older than 17 or 18. Her clothes were threadbare, her hair hung in tangled curls around her face. She was obviously homeless, no question. But there was a certain poise to how she sat, chin lifted as if she refused to bow to the circumstances around her. Mark braced himself. Usually, the only reason a call like this came through was because someone from a nearby store had complained. Maybe an owner had asked her to move on, and she'd refused. Or perhaps she was scaring off potential customers with her mere presence. He'd seen it 1,000 times, nothing unique. This was just another day in the life of Mark Stevenson. He stepped out of the cruiser, letting the door slam behind him, the wet asphalt soaked into his shoes. He approached the girl. "Hey!" he called out, voice clipped. "You're not supposed to be here." She lifted her face to look at him, big eyes peering out with neither fear nor submission. If anything, there was a firmness in her gaze, something that took Mark by surprise. "I didn't know it was a crime to sit on a public sidewalk, sir," she said quietly. Mark sighed. "I just got a complaint. Someone wants you off their property. Are you on store property?" She shrugged, glancing at the closed bookstore. "They're not even open, but fine. I can move along." She gathered her plastic bag and started to stand. For reasons Mark couldn't identify, annoyance flared within him. Something about her demeanor, too calm, too confident, despite her circumstances, rubbed him the wrong way. He was used to homeless individuals scurrying away, apologizing profusely, or even cursing at him. But she just accepted the situation like she was humoring him. "You got anywhere to go?" Mark asked. The question came out sharper than he intended. She paused, studying his features for a moment. "No, officer, but I'll figure something out." Mark stared at her, trying to guess what kind of background she might have had. Runaway teen? A victim of the foster care system? Detroit was harsh on kids with no family support. Even as the questions tumbled through his mind, he couldn't help the cynicism that came with experience. He tried to read the faint outline of her name on an old hospital band around her wrist. He caught a partial glance. Ali. But the rest was too smudged. Maybe her name started with Ali. She tried to hide the bracelet under her sleeve. "You can't linger here," Mark repeated. "I don't want to have to run you in for trespassing or loitering. So move on." For a second, it seemed like she might protest. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Then she simply gave him a small nod. She turned to walk away, her tattered sneakers sloshing in the rain puddles. He couldn't resist letting out a dry, humorless laugh. "Yeah, that's what I thought." She paused in her steps at the sound of his laughter. Her shoulders stiffened and she glanced back. Something in her eyes seemed to say, "You have no idea who I am or what I'm capable of." But she didn't speak it aloud. Instead, she disappeared around the corner, the relentless drizzle pattering against the sidewalk. Mark's chuckle echoed in the hollow street. To him, it was nothing, just a reflex. Maybe a release of frustration. He never once imagined that that laugh would haunt him. 2 days passed. Mark had nearly forgotten the incident. He had other calls, more pressing matters. A stolen vehicle near Belle Isle, a domestic disturbance in Midtown. The city's problems were never ending, and Mark's heart remained jaded. But in the back of his mind, he kept remembering the girl's steady gaze. Something about her had been different. He found himself driving down Woodward again, glancing around to see if she was still there. She was not. The corner was empty, aside from an abandoned grocery cart and a few soggy cardboard boxes. Part of him felt relieved, telling himself that maybe she'd gone to a shelter. Another part of him brushed away any hint of empathy. What business was it of his, anyway? That same evening, he stopped by a local 24-hour diner, Lafayette Coney Island, a well-known spot in Detroit for cheap chili dogs. The neon sign flickered, welcoming the city's night owls. Mark sat down on a swiveling stool at the counter. He ordered coffee, black, no sugar. As he lifted the mug to his lips, he spotted someone across the street, leaning against a lamppost. He couldn't be entirely sure, but he recognized the jacket. It was the same over-large, ragged coat that he'd seen that girl wearing. She was talking with a tall man in a hooded sweatshirt. Something about the exchange made Mark's instincts prickle. A drug deal, maybe? Or was she trying to get money? Though he was off duty, Mark's sense of duty compelled him to check. He paid for his coffee and stepped out into the brisk Detroit night. By the time he crossed the street, the man was gone and the girl was alone. She looked startled, then frowned when she recognized him. "You again?" she muttered. "What was that about?" Mark demanded, ignoring her wary tone. "Are you dealing? Buying? Don't lie to me." She sighed heavily, the weight of the world evident in her body language. "I wasn't selling or buying anything illegal, officer." "I was looking for help," Mark scoffed. "Right. You don't believe me," she said softly. He crossed his arms. "Is that your new corner now? Why can't you just—" He paused. He'd been about to say, "Why can't you just go home?" But he remembered she likely didn't have one. "Look," she said, exhaustion bleeding into her voice, "I appreciate your concern, or your suspicion, or whatever it is. But I'm not a criminal. I'm just going through a rough time." Mark felt a flicker of empathy, quickly drowned by his cynicism. Rough times don't give people the right to break the law. She shook her head, lips pressed tightly together. "You don't know me, officer. That's all I can say." She stepped back, eyes searching for an escape route. Before Mark could stop her, she darted off into the night, moving with surprising speed for someone who looked half-starved. He thought about chasing her down, but he was off duty. The night was cold, and rationally, he had no probable cause to arrest her. So he let her go, a twinge of unsettled curiosity gnawing at his gut. Over the next few days, small, strange things began happening that Mark struggled to connect. A rumor circulated at the precinct about some official from Lansing, possibly with ties to the governor's office, who was discreetly looking for a missing girl. Supposedly, she had vanished under suspicious circumstances, and law enforcement agencies throughout Michigan were asked to keep an eye out. During briefing one morning, Mark's lieutenant addressed the squad room. "We got a possible missing person, an African-American female, late teens, believed to be traveling on foot or with random acquaintances. Last known location might be in or around Detroit. The details are hush-hush, but let's keep our eyes peeled. If you see or hear anything, report it immediately." When Mark heard the description, something clutched at his stomach. A teenage African-American girl, alone in Detroit streets. It could be anyone. But then again, it might be that same girl he'd encountered. A memory of the partial name on her wristband flashed through his mind: Ali. The lieutenant read off the name from a printed memo. Her name is Alalia Davis. She might not be using that name, though. No father listed, mother's name Carla Davis, no known local addresses. We have reason to believe she's either in Detroit or possibly made her way to Flint. If you come across her, do not engage publicly. Contact the station immediately. The governor's office is extremely invested in this case. Mark's brow furrowed. Was it the same person? The timing and description matched too well to be a coincidence. He shifted in his seat, uneasy. Could it really be that the homeless girl in the oversized jacket was tied to powerful figures in Lansing? A few nights later, Mark was again patrolling near the old bookstore on Woodward. The city was ironically quiet, too quiet. In Mark's experience, nights like these usually preceded chaos. The radio was mostly silent, aside from an occasional beep. He glanced in his rearview mirror and nearly jumped when he saw someone moving behind the row of deserted shops. He pulled the squad car over and climbed out. Flashlight in hand, he clicked it on and swept the beam through the dark alley. There she was, rummaging near a trashed dumpster. The same battered jacket, the same tense posture. She looked up at the sweep of his flashlight, annoyance flickering across her face when she recognized him. "You must be following me," she said, half joking, half exasperated. Mark didn't answer right away. For a moment, he watched as she stood stiffly in the beam of light. She looked thinner than before, as if she hadn't eaten in days. Bruises stained her arms, maybe from the cold or from some scuffle. Anger toward the city's cruelty swelled within him, mingled with an urge to remain detached. He lowered the flashlight so it wouldn't blind her. "We got a tip about suspicious activity," he lied. "You again?" She shrugged. "I'm just trying to find food. I'm not suspicious." Mark clenched his jaw. The image of her rummaging in the dumpster broke through the shell of cynicism he wore like armor. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Your real name." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't worry about it." Mark took a step closer, ignoring the rank smell of decay in the alley. "I might be able to help you. I know someone's looking for a missing girl. If that's you, maybe I can." "No!" she snapped, cutting him off. "You stay out of it. You've done enough." Her voice quivered. "If you only knew what it's like. People will do terrible things for money, and I'd rather be on the streets than..." She trailed off, biting her lip. "You're a cop, but I can't trust you. You laughed at me." The memory of his dismissive chuckle flashed in his mind. Shame pricked him. I didn't mean anything by that." She said nothing, only stared, as if waiting for him to do something like arrest her. Instead, he just sighed. "Look," he said, "I can't let you keep sleeping on the streets. It's dangerous." She scoffed. "So you'll send me to a shelter or jail? Is your name Alia Davis?" Mark asked quietly, ignoring her question. Her eyes widened and she took a step back. That was all the confirmation he needed. She looked more terrified at the mention of that name than she had at the prospect of him arresting her. She pivoted, ready to sprint out of the alley. "Wait," Mark called, but she was already gone, running into the darkness, her footsteps echoing off the damp concrete. Mark returned to his squad car, heart pounding. It was her, Aaliyah Davis. But how was a homeless girl rummaging through dumpsters connected to Lansing's power players? A coil of guilt twisted inside him. She was obviously frightened of being found. What had she meant by people will do terrible things for money? Was her life in danger? Was she running from some threat in the governor's office? Or from criminals who wanted to exploit her? He recalled the instructions from the lieutenant: "If you see or hear anything, report it immediately." But what if that puts her in more danger? Mark thought. The standard protocol was to contact his superiors, but the haunted look in her eyes stopped him. He'd spent years doing everything by the book, yet, lately, that book felt incomplete. For the first time in a while, he questioned the official lines. Still, he did some digging on his own. Late that night, after clocking out, he logged into the police database from his personal laptop at home. He typed in Aaliyah Davis, cross-referencing with any mention of Lansing or the governor's office. One result popped up: a birth certificate filed in Lansing for an Aaliyah J. Davis, born to Carla Davis, no father listed, no further details. Another file indicated that Carla Davis had once worked as a clerk in the governor's administrative offices. Carla had died in an unsolved homicide just 3 months prior. Mark reread the lines: "Carla Davis, found dead in her Lansing apartment, cause of death under investigation. Survived by daughter Aaliyah Davis, age 18. Mark's eyebrows rose. So the mother was presumably murdered. The daughter had vanished soon after. That explained a lot, but not everything. He looked further and found a small note that the governor himself had expressed deep sorrow at Carla's death, calling her an indispensable part of his staff, though her job title was never elaborated. That was odd. A clerk described as indispensable. Mark's instincts sensed a puzzle. Maybe Carla knew something she wasn't supposed to know. The final line read, "An anonymous donor has posted a $50,000 reward for information about Aaliyah Davis's whereabouts." This was bigger than Mark could have imagined. In the days that followed, Mark's moral dilemma grew. Should he quietly approach Aaliyah, try to gain her trust, and see if she would come forward voluntarily? Or should he follow protocol, tell his superiors, bring in Child Protective Services or Adult Protective Services since she was borderline of age, and collect the reward? He found himself scanning the streets constantly. Nights on patrol became hunts for a shadow. He'd catch glimpses of her, once near the People Mover station, another time in a deserted lot near Eastern Market. But each time, she vanished before he could speak with her. Officer Emily Rhodes, one of Mark's only real friends on the force, noticed his distraction. "Hey, you've been a million miles away," she said, sipping coffee in the break room. "It's this missing girl case," Mark admitted. "We might have crossed paths. She's terrified of being found." "Maybe she has reason to be," Emily said. "Sometimes it's not safe to come forward. Maybe she knows something about her mother's death." Mark frowned. "You think Carla Davis was killed over something she discovered in the governor's office?" "That's the kind of conspiracy that gets people in big trouble, Em." Emily shrugged, but her eyes were serious. "If the reward's that high and the inquiry hush-hush, there's something more at play. Be careful, Mark." Eventually, fate intervened. One rainy evening, Mark got a call about a disturbance at an abandoned factory near the Detroit River. Allegedly, a group of men were chasing a teenage girl who'd been squatting inside. Mark arrived to find a black SUV idling out front, tinted windows gleaming under the streetlights. By the time he made his way in, the place was silent, but for dripping water echoing in the cavernous space. Broken windows let in the night air. Concrete floors were littered with old machinery parts and graffiti. As he progressed deeper into the factory, his flashlight beam caught movement. Aaliyah. She was crouched behind a rusted conveyor belt. Trembling, Mark rushed over. Fear shone in her eyes, but there was also relief at seeing a familiar face, even if it was the face of a cop she'd once considered an enemy. "They're after me," she whispered. "Who?" Mark demanded, scanning the darkness. She swallowed hard. "I don't know exactly, but they've been following me for weeks. Every time I change locations, they show up. I think they're connected to my mother's murder." Her voice shook with desperation. Mark motioned for her to keep quiet, then carefully peered around the conveyor belt. The black SUV was still outside, headlights off, waiting. The men were nowhere to be seen. They might be scanning the premises or planning a trap. He tried to coax Aaliyah to follow him out. "Come on, we can find a safe way out the back. I'll call for backup." She was so frightened that she let him pull her to her feet. They inched along the side wall, stepping over debris. The building's skeletal remains provided minimal cover. Suddenly, a voice rang out in the darkness. "We know you're in here, girl. Come out now, and we'll make this easy." Aaliyah's hand tightened on Mark's sleeve. The voice was harsh, laced with the confidence of a hunter cornering prey. Mark's heart raced. He signaled Aaliyah to stay behind him. "I'm armed," he shouted back, "and I'm an officer of the Detroit Police. You're trespassing on private property, so if you don't leave, you'll be arrested." Silence. Then footsteps. A man's silhouette flickered in the flashlight beam, a large figure in a dark jacket. The man's face was partially obscured by a hood, but Mark glimpsed the glint of a sidearm in his grip. Mark drew his service weapon, pointing it forward. "Drop your weapon, police!" A tense standoff ensued, but the man retreated, disappearing into the shadows. Mark hustled Aaliyah along, trying to put distance between them and the intruder. They found a side exit that opened to a deserted walkway near the water. Mark poked his head out coast clear, for now. Leading Aaliyah outside, Mark hurried to his squad car, which was parked in front. The black SUV's doors were shut. Its engine roared to life the moment they emerged. In a flash, the SUV peeled away, vanishing into the dark streets. Mark turned the key in his cruiser's ignition and took off in the opposite direction, adrenaline coursing through him. Aaliyah slumped in the passenger seat, silent, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, Mark fully grasped how terrified she was. She had no reason to trust him, yet she'd put her life in his hands tonight. Once they were safely away, Mark pulled into a well-lit parking lot behind a 24-hour pharmacy. He shut off the engine and turned to Aaliyah, who was trembling. "Now, you have to tell me what's going on. Who are these men, and why are they after you?" She sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't know who they work for. All I know is that right before my mum died, she was really stressed. She was always staying late at the office. One night, she came home crying, said she found out something big, something dangerous. She wouldn't tell me details because she didn't want me to worry. Then, a week later, she was gone. Aaliyah's voice choked, but she pushed on. "Mum told me if anything happened to her, I should run. She gave me enough money for a bus ticket to Detroit, said I could hide among the crowds. Then I heard the news that she was killed. After that, men started following me, threatening me. They said they'd pay me if I gave them what they wanted. But I don't even know what it is they're after." Mark thought quickly. "Maybe your mum left evidence with you, or maybe you have the password to some files she possessed. They think you know more than you do." She nodded miserably. "I only have a small flash drive she left me, but it's encrypted, and I have no idea what's on it. I keep it in my jacket pocket because I'm terrified of leaving it anywhere else." Mark's anger flared, anger at the men chasing her, anger at a system that let an 18-year-old girl fall through the cracks, forced to hide in dumpsters while criminals pursued her. And anger at himself for laughing at her in the first place, for contributing to her sense of isolation. He made a decision then and there, crossing a line he never dreamed he'd cross. "Aaliyah, I'm going to protect you, but we can't trust just anyone at the station. Some folks might be on the payroll of whoever wants you silenced. We'll do this quietly." Then he paused, hesitating only a moment. "I know someone, a friend in it, who might be able to see what's on that flash drive." The next morning, Mark called in a favor from an old high school buddy named Chris, a freelance cybersecurity expert. They met in a nondescript cafe near Detroit's west side. Aaliyah sat in the corner booth, looking tired but determined. She handed over the flash drive with trembling fingers. Chris plugged it into a secure laptop, hammered away at the keyboard, frowning. "This is some high-level encryption, definitely not standard. Might take me a day or two to crack. But there's something else. Some of the code uses state-level security protocols, like something from a government computer." Aaliyah's lips tightened. "My mum worked in the governor's office." "Maybe that's why." Chris nodded and carefully packed up his laptop. "I'll take it back to my place. I'll call once I have something." Mark offered Aaliyah a safe place to sleep in his spare bedroom for the night. She was hesitant, but with no other options, she agreed. He gave her some clean blankets and pillows. The small, cramped apartment smelled of stale coffee and leftover pizza, but to Aaliyah, it was the safest she'd felt in weeks. Later that evening, as Mark went to fetch some groceries, he noticed a black SUV parked down the block. The hair on his neck stood on end. "They've tracked us here." He hurried home, telling Aaliyah to stay inside and lock the doors. At the same time, fear gnawed at him. Was there a mole in the department, or had someone in the cafe recognized him? He confided in Emily Rhodes the next day. "I'm in over my head," he admitted. "They've found out where I live." Emily's eyes flickered with concern. "You can't keep her there. Let's figure out a safer spot." She chewed her lip. "You sure you can trust me?" Mark hesitated, then nodded. "You're the only one here who has my back." But his instincts whispered caution. The infiltration might go deeper than he realized. Could Emily herself be compromised? He decided to limit the information he shared for Aaliyah's safety. Chris called Mark 2 days later, voice urgent. "You need to see this right now. The files on the drive, they're a gold mine of evidence. Bank transfers, logs of phone calls, a few cryptic references to massive government contracts. And there's more. It implicates high-ranking individuals in Lansing, the governor included, in some kind of slush fund scandal. Carla Davis must have discovered it and secretly downloaded the data." Mark's pulse pounded. "So that's why they killed her, most likely, and they want Aaliyah either to find out what she knows or to silence her so this doesn't go public," Chris said grimly. Mark realized the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about one missing girl. The entire state administration could be rocked if the data went public. The men chasing Aaliyah were likely well-funded, possibly with direct connections to powerful people who would stop at nothing to keep her quiet. That same evening, Mark returned to his apartment and found Aaliyah pacing anxiously. "How much longer until we figure out what's on that drive?" she asked, as soon as he walked in. Mark took a deep breath. "We have it. It's big, Aaliyah. It's evidence that ties powerful people to corruption, and possibly your mother's murder." Her face went pale. "So what do we do now?" He thought for a long moment. Then he said, "We go public. We can't hide forever. The only way to protect you is to shine the brightest spotlight on them. We find a reputable journalist, someone who isn't afraid to blow this wide open. Once it's out in the world, you'll be safer because they can't risk the public backlash of harming you." Aaliyah nodded, tears welling up. "I was so angry at you," she whispered. I hated how you laughed at me. But you're the only one who's tried to help. Thank you." Guilt burned at Mark's chest. "I'm sorry for judging you, for treating you like you were nothing." He took her hand gently. "I promise, we'll see this through. Time was running out." Mark made an appointment with a trusted investigative reporter from the Detroit Free Press, a man named Harold Benton, famous for bringing corruption cases to light. Mark arranged to meet Harold in a neutral location, a busy coffee shop in Midtown, hoping that the crowd would deter any would-be attackers. Aaliyah accompanied him, wearing borrowed clothes so she wouldn't be recognized easily. They waited for Harold at a small table. The moment the reporter walked in, tension blanketed the air. Mark handed him a copy of the data on a new flash drive. "This is it," Mark said quietly. "Enough evidence to put some big names behind bars if you can verify it and go public." Harold flipped open his laptop, inserted the drive, and quickly scanned the files. His eyes widened. "This is explosive material. You realize heads are going to roll, right?" Mark nodded. "That's the idea." Before Harold could say more, a side door to the coffee shop banged open. A group of men rushed in, one of them the same hooded figure from the factory. Chaos erupted. Customers screamed, diving for cover behind tables. Mark reached for his weapon, but he was outnumbered. Two men grabbed him, slamming him against the wall. Another advanced on Aaliyah. Just when it seemed hopeless, uniformed officers swarmed in, led by Emily Rhodes. Sirens blared. She must have followed Mark, anticipating trouble. The group of armed men found themselves confronted by multiple drawn firearms. They had no choice but to drop their weapons, furious and cursing. Emily rushed over to Mark. "You okay?" Mark nodded, breathing heavily. "Yeah, thanks to you." Aaliyah clung to Harold, shaking uncontrollably. But the flash drive was safe, still in the laptop. The men were arrested, and by the time the dust settled, a wave of relief swept through the coffee shop. Mark made eye contact with the hooded man, whose glare radiated hatred. Mark had no doubt these men were connected to powerful figures in Lansing, but now, at least, they were in custody. Within hours, Harold Benton and his editor at the Detroit Free Press took the story live, carefully verifying the documents with legal experts. By the next morning, an investigative report was splashed across the front page. Corruption allegations rock governor's office, slush fund tied to secret accounts. The story caught fire, picked up by major national news outlets. The governor was forced to address the allegations, stammering in press conferences as more damning evidence surfaced daily. An official criminal investigation commenced. Subpoenas were issued, and multiple high-ranking officials found themselves under scrutiny. The chain of events triggered by one flash drive shook the entire political landscape of Michigan. And Aaliyah? She finally felt safe enough to step forward. With Mark's help, she testified to what she knew, though she admitted she was mostly in the dark until now. Regardless, her mother's courage was no longer a secret. Carla Davis had died trying to expose the truth, and now her daughter would see her legacy through. What about karma for Officer Mark Stevenson, who first laughed at a homeless black girl? Life had a way of dishing out poetic justice. Though Mark's conscience was redeemed by helping Aaliyah, he still faced disciplinary questions from the department for breaking protocol, specifically for not immediately reporting Aaliyah's presence. He'd also used departmental resources off the record. An internal affairs investigation was launched against him. In the weeks that followed, Mark found himself under intense scrutiny. Some praised him as a hero for exposing corruption. Others vilified him for going rogue and putting the department's reputation at risk. The city was divided. Mark, exhausted, simply wanted to protect Aaliyah and ensure justice for Carla Davis. Finally, The day came for Mark's disciplinary hearing. Tension weighed on him as he sat before a board of senior officers. They grilled him on his choices. He explained that the chain of command was compromised, that the safety of a vulnerable young woman was his top priority. He admitted that he'd defied orders, but insisted it was for the greater good. After hours of deliberation, the board issued their verdict. Mark Stevenson was suspended for 6 months without pay, pending possible demotion. It wasn't a complete termination, but it was a harsh blow. The official statement read, "Officer Stevenson acted with good intentions but violated departmental procedures, thereby endangering an official police investigation." The irony was not lost on Mark. He had exposed the biggest corruption scandal in recent memory, yet he was the one facing punishment. When he left the hearing, he felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. At least he could still support Aaliyah. Perhaps he could return to the force one day, but something told him that, even if he did, he would never wear the badge the same way again. With the menacing pursuers arrested and the corruption scandal in full public view, Aaliyah finally began to breathe more freely. Investigators reopened Carla Davis's murder case. Aaliyah cooperated fully, determined to see justice served for her mother. Mark, meanwhile, took a job as a private security consultant during his suspension, using his experience to protect vulnerable clients and occasionally volunteering at homeless outreach programs. The memory of his cold laughter at Aaliyah haunted him, pushing him to do better. He realized how easily he could have dismissed her forever, letting the system chew her up. That one small moment of cruelty could have changed both their destinies. He often visited Aaliyah, who was placed under a protective watch at a safe location outside Detroit. She told him about her plans to finish high school and eventually study criminal justice. She wanted to help protect people the way her mother had tried to protect the state's integrity, and the way Mark had finally protected her. Sitting together one afternoon, Aaliyah and Mark gazed out at the city skyline. The sun was setting, painting the horizon in orange and gold. For the first time in a long while, both of them felt a glimmer of hope. Aaliyah broke the silence. "I heard you were suspended." Mark let out a humorless chuckle. "Yeah, it's a small price to pay. And honestly, maybe I needed a wake-up call. I forgot why I joined the force in the first place. I lost sight of my humanity." She offered a gentle smile. "Well, I'm sorry for what you're going through, but I'm grateful too." Mark stared at the shimmering river. "Me too," he said quietly. "Me too." Aaliyah leaned her head against his shoulder, and for a moment the city's restless noise faded away, replaced by the quiet understanding that every life matters, and every small action, whether an act of kindness or cruelty, can change the world in unimaginable ways. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster of a story. We witnessed a police officer's moment of cruelty toward a vulnerable girl, and how that single event shaped both of their lives in ways they could never have imagined. Through twists of fate, hidden betrayals, and moments of redemption, we saw how one courageous decision can topple the walls of corruption and restore hope where all seemed lost. Aaliyah's resilience reminds us that we are not defined by our darkest hours, but by our determination to rise above them. If this story moved you in any way, please consider showing your support. Like this video if you believe in second chances, share it to inspire others who might be facing their own struggles, and subscribe to this channel for more stories that prove hope can come from the most unexpected places. Your engagement truly makes a difference.